Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. A federal judge unsealed a heavily redacted affidavit that led to the FBI's raid of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. The Justice Department justified the raid in the affidavit. In the affidavit unsealed on Friday, DOJ prosecutors argued there was enough probable cause to determine classified documents remained at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. But because of the redactions in the affidavit, it's unclear what allegedly classified documents and presidential records were being kept there and why the DOJ believed it is necessary to raid President Trump's home for those materials. Former White House aide Kash Patel recently revealed that the seized materials had to do with Russiagate and the FBI's 2016 Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Trump reacted to the unsealing of the affidavit on Truth Social, saying, quote, "Affidavit heavily redacted, nothing mentioned on nuclear." President Joe Biden today also reacted.
I don't even want to know. I'll let the Justice Department take that.
But Biden admitted there are circumstances where it can be appropriate to have such materials at home.
Depending on the circumstance. For example, I have in my home a cabined off space that is completely secure. I'm taking home with me today today's PDD. It's locked. I have a person with me, military with me. I read it, I lock it back up and give it to the military.
So far, the DOJ has not explained what exactly they were looking for at Trump's home. President Biden took aim at Trump supporters at a rally for Democratic donors in Maryland last night. He said that MAGA ideology is like semi-fascism.
The MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and economic security. They're a threat to our very democracy. They refuse to accept the will of the people. They embrace political violence. They don't believe in democracy.
One man interrupted the president's speech, yelling that Biden stole the election. Over 74 million people voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Former Bush advisor Karl Rove said he did not always agree with Trump. However, he said it is egregious to label millions of Trump voters for supporting good policies.
He had been for a strong national defense, rebuilding our military after 8 years of the Obama-Biden administration. He believed in secure borders and building the wall. He believed in law and order when our cities were in flames, and he appointed conservative judges. And that's a semi-fascist philosophy.
Rove added that Biden had made a pledge to unite the nation, but now he will say whatever it takes to win elections. Dr. Peter Navarro is an expert on China and understands the threat stemming from the Chinese Communist Party. He served as assistant to the president and was director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy in former President Trump's White House. He just wrote a book talking about his experiences at the White House and what it would take for Trump to win back the presidency. Here's part of our discussion. Peter Navarro, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Always good to be with NTD.
Really appreciate that. Now, Peter, you have a new book coming out called Taking Back Trump's America. Give us a preview, if you would, and tell us, what is Trump's America?
Trump's America is the MAGA blueprint, which took us in 2017 through 4 years of the most prosperous economy in modern history and a world where we were safe and secure from the likes of communist China, imperial Russia, crazy North Korea, and crazier Iran. Oh, that's a toss-up between those two. The Taking Back Trump's America book is important because it's both a blueprint and battle cry for the MAGA movement to do two things. One, we have to take back the House of Representatives from Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi and her merry band of fools like Schiff and Raskin and others have weaponized the investigatory powers of Congress in a way which violates the Constitution, is destroying our republic as we know it. And their one mission is to try to take out Donald Trump in 2024. So the Taking Back Trump's America book is important to me as a mission. And by the way, it's also my legal defense fund as the FBI and the Department of Justice and Democrats on Capitol Hill are trying to put me behind bars simply for standing up for my president and my Constitution.
Peter, you obviously have a deep respect for the president. You served under him loyally for 4 years. However, in your book, you don't pull any punches when talking about some of his mistakes, specifically with personnel choices.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the biggest hiring challenges the president had.
Yeah, that was the biggest. I call it the Achilles heel of the boss. I love the boss, despite these bad personnel. He was the best president we've ever had. But if we're looking forward to 2024, past cannot be prologue. And I was one of only 3 people with President Trump from the campaign all the way to the end, one of the 3 senior advisors. And I was there during the transition. There's a great story in the Taking Back Trump's America book about how what we called the November 9thers came in the day after the November 8th election from the Republican National Committee, took over the war room at Trump Tower, and proceeded one by one to purge the Trump loyalists. And what would happen very quickly is there would be, I call it the cabinet of clowns in the Taking Back Trump's America book. We put in place just really stupid choices like Rex Tillerson at State, Jim Mattis at the Defense Department, and some other grifters. And, Ben Carson, I love that guy, but putting him at HUD was like stupid. I mean, if we'd had him at Health and Human Services when the pandemic hit, everything would have been fine. So we made those bad choices because of what Steve Bannon called the original sin of the administration, which was try to bring in the Rhino Republicans into the Trump coalition. It just didn't work. But I think it's really important, if we're going to win back the White House 2024, that we govern over the next 4 years in a way which gets things done. Time is precious when you're in the White House, as we learned. And there were things we left on the table that I wish we hadn't.
Peter, you've been very clear on China before it was, say, the cool thing to do. Some say you wrote the book on how to deal with China in the CCP. You actually did write another book on China, literally. But to my point, do you think President Trump left anything on the table? Is there any unfinished business when it comes to confronting the CCP?
Well, look, the thing that bothers me about Jared Kushner, he's out like pimping his book now, which is fiction, not fact. But one of the big reveals in that book is his claim of credit for the, quote, historic trade deal we had signed in January 2020. The reality of that deal was it was the skinny deal. That's what it was. It was a pale shadow of what it should have done. And what was revealed in Kushner's book, and he seems to be proud of it, is he was double dealing with Steve Schwarzman on Wall Street and John Thornton, these guys, along with the Chinese Communist Party negotiators, behind the backs of me and Lighthizer and even the president, to come up with this bad deal. And that's what we left on the table. I mean, if Trump gets back into office, I can assure you one of the first things he's going to do, he doesn't have to pound on any table, just do it quietly, is lock out tariffs on communist China, and we'll just cut the cord from them, because every dollar we pay at Walmart for a made in communist China product, it goes into their military war machine to take out Taiwan. I think we can't be that stupid anymore, and that's why these Mnuchin and Kushner and Kudlow and Cohn, these people just didn't belong in Trump land, and the Trump people know that. But boy, they did some damage.
Peter Navarro, thank you so much.
Good to see you, my friend.
A disappointing day for anyone hoping for lower interest rates. The Federal Reserve today says they plan to continue a restrictive policy stance. That means more pain for households and businesses lies ahead. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
Restoring price stability will take some time.
Warning of more economic pain, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell sends a clear signal that interest rates will stay high, at least before the central bank gets inflation under control.
Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive policy stance for some time.
The tight monetary policy, Powell says, means a weaker job market, slower economic growth, and
some pain to households and businesses.
Powell adds, while these are unfortunate costs of taming inflation,
but a failure to restore price stability would mean far greater pain.
Inflation slowed in July as gas prices dropped, with President Biden touting that compared with June,
That our economy had 0% inflation in the month of July.
Yet compared with a year ago, it jumped 8.5%. And Powell said Friday,
A single month's improvement falls far short of what the committee will need to see before we are confident that inflation is moving down.
That's as some economists say the Fed began acting too late and thus is now locked into rate hikes.
They were wrong about inflation being transitory, and now they really, put themselves in a corner where they have to deliver rate hikes aggressively.
And Powell did not say the Fed would continue its massive 75 basis point rate increases after 2 of them in a row. But officials are expected to approve either a 50 or 75 basis point hike next month. Meanwhile, the Fed will get another month worth of data before it meets again and potentially announces another rate hike in September. The monthly jobs report is due on next Friday, September 2nd, and the Consumer Price Index for the month of August will be out on September 13th. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Most of the stories you've been hearing about immigration highlight the chaos at the southwest border. But in fact, the entire immigration system in the United States is being stressed, even for people who've come to the U.S. legally. About 500,000 asylum seekers legally in the United States are living in a constant state of uncertainty, compounded by the threat of persecution in their home countries. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the story.
Many have described our immigration system as broken. While the word immigration brings to mind those chaotic images at the southern border, immigration woes reach further. There are nearly 500,000 immigrants in the U.S. who came here legally, but have been stuck in the backlog of asylum claims for years, some waiting 7 years or more.
In some cases, they haven't seen their spouse or their children during that time. The uncertainty, they don't know if they're going to be able to stay here or they'll have to leave. And all the time they're here, and many of them have work permits, so they're building their life here, but without knowing whether or not that'll be torn away from them.
The pressure is even greater for those who still have family in their home countries, as those family members might not be safe. Many of these immigrants are seeking asylum because they fear persecution due to their political opinion, race, social group, nationality, or spiritual beliefs. Tiffany Zhang, a Falun Dafa practitioner, is currently stuck in the asylum system. She fled China fearing persecution from the Chinese Communist Party.
In 2001, my mother was sent to brainwashing center, and the last time she was persecuted in China was in 2018. And every time I hear the sound of knocking the door, I was really afraid that the people outside the door were the police.
Zhang applied in 2020. Her case, now on the top of the stack, gets priority over those old cases, meaning those who applied earlier are falling further and further away from having an interview. Jason Zubo, an immigration attorney specializing in political asylum, tells me these are the longest waits ever seen.
And now we're at more than 440,000 cases in the backlog. And this is, by the way, cases, meaning some cases have a spouse and children. So you're talking probably around 800,000 people.
And the illegal immigration surge hasn't helped. There are currently 1.7 million cases filed in immigration court, those who are claiming asylum to prevent removal from the U.S. This puts even more of a stranglehold on the immigration system. Fortunately, the Biden administration has hired an additional 80 asylum officers to start processing applicants who filed for asylum on or before January 1st of 2016.
But they have a lot of distractions from other types of cases, including at the border, including something called NACARA, which is a benefit for certain Central Americans. And that's fine. Those cases need to be adjudicated as well, but asylum seekers always seem to be the ones who are sort of left behind.
So what more, aside from these 80 new officers, what more could the Biden administration or Congress do to help ease this backlog?
I think the one thing that really needs to happen is we as a nation need to make a decision about what we want to do about people arriving at the border. A lot of people obviously are arriving at the border seeking asylum. Those people, if you talk to them and meet them, they are fearful of returning to their home countries. But the question is, does that fear equate to a valid claim for asylum? And in some cases it does, in some cases it doesn't.
Congress members from both parties have told NTD they recognize the asylum system needs reform, but lawmakers and leadership have not yet made any real moves toward addressing the mounting issue. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
A D.C. Superior Judge has ruled that the vaccine mandate for D.C. government employees is unlawful. In January, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser announced that all D.C. workers must be fully vaccinated or face disciplinary action. Judge Maurice Ross ruled yesterday that the D.C. mayor did not have the legal authority to impose a vaccine mandate to begin with. In the ruling, the judge said that Bowser is now permanently enjoined from implementing, imposing, and/or enforcing the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Yesterday's ruling is especially significant for the D.C. Police Department. D.C. Police Chief Robert Conti told the City Council earlier this year that the department was struggling to keep recruits because they were choosing to not be vaccinated. In the ruling, Judge Ross said that members of the police must be reimbursed for any loss of benefits, pay, or rights, and all related disciplinary proceedings must be expunged from their records. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.